Hello and welcome to my name is Bahaudin Mujtaba and I teach courses related to diversity, leadership, management, human resources, business ethics, and international management topics. And my research focuses mostly on similar topics related to cross-cultural diversity, business ethics, management, and leadership practices, both locally and nationally, as well as internationally across the globe. As you can see from day-to-day news stories, we are no longer rising and falling as if in one large national boat. Rather, we are increasingly in different but smaller boats. In other words, our workforce and colleagues are becoming more heterogeneous. So diversity management inclusion practices are helpful for all of us in every single field. Since no two human beings are exactly alike, diversity is about each and every one of us in terms of our differences, as well as our commonalities that we share as individuals and as teammates in our workplaces. For example, my diverse heritage and travels during my teenage years might be very similar to some of you, while also very different from others of you. I was born in the city of happiness called Hoshi district, which was populated with about 1,000 people in the province of Logar of Afghanistan, and I was raised in Kabul of Afghanistan. Now here I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with about 6 million people surrounding me throughout the South Florida region. So similar to me, each of you bring in much diversity that's associated with your specific and unique background, your education, your personal experiences, in your overall life philosophies that you have learned so far. I look forward to learning more about each and every one of you during this semester, and hopefully you will have as much fun as I do every semester. What is cultural diversity? Just to get you started, let me briefly introduce diversity and some relevant concepts for you in this initial lecture. For the past few decades, learning and teaching about diversity has become more complex because organizations are realizing that effective diversity management is much more than just meeting the needs of their female or minority employees. Therefore, diversity is inclusive of many more dimensions than just gender and skin color, let's say. Effective diversity management has always been and should be an all-inclusive concept. While workplace has become more diverse, many organizations find themselves unable to adapt successfully to these changes. As a matter of fact, millions of dollars are spent every single year on diversity training programs, but in many cases, they have minimal impact on changing actual behaviors in the corporate cultures of our organizations. In addition, while equal employment opportunity laws and affirmative action policies and programs may have helped to open the doors for some diverse workers, legislation has actually done very little to improve interpersonal understanding among coworkers. In fact, misunderstanding these laws in attempts to avoid lawsuits may actually contribute to increased backlash against minority or diverse workers in any workplace, public sector or private. Even when a person is fully qualified, diverse employees are at times considered or stigmatized by their coworkers to have obtained the position because of the differences that they represent, rather than because of their qualification, their skills and experiences. As a result, unfair treatment of some individuals often take more subtle form. So therefore, we must focus on creating an inclusive work environment for all of our colleagues, employees, customers, suppliers, and anyone else in our workplace that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. An inclusive culture exists where members of each group, department, or organization can be heterogeneous, and together they create a distinctive competitive advantage through teamwork and their unique cultural knowledge in the diversity that they all bring in. Let me explain how an inclusive culture might be distinguished from exclusive ones by looking at a diversity continuum of 5 different positions, which include exclusion, tolerance, awareness and sensitivity culture, pluralistic culture, and finally, inclusive culture. Exclusive organizational culture is one where people are homogeneous and outsiders are easily distinguished from insiders due to the group's socialization process and expected norms. In some respects, it is very typical of high context cultures where local people are easily distinguished from foreigners. Oftentimes, biases are implied and automatically understood by the locals in both subtle and somewhat overt manners. Second is the tolerance culture. This is the melting pot mindset of assimilation basically being the norm. Assimilation requires people to lose their cultural differences and blend into the group or wider society. Third is awareness and sensitive culture, where managers and employees receive some basic training about diversity, about cultural sensitivity, and the importance of respecting each other, and obviously behaving based on professionalism code in the industry. Fourth is the pluralistic culture. Pluralism takes place when cultural differences are acknowledged and preserved. And finally is the inclusive organizational culture, where we talked about the fact that groups can be heterogeneous and together or jointly they create somewhat of a distinctive competitive advantage because of their unique cultural knowledge and the differences that they bring into the team. So this is typical of low context cultural traits where nothing can be taken for granted, as everything is expected to be explicitly stated and clarified, as we have in the US in most cases, where we need lawyers to basically go over contracts. Note that your goal should be to be a good diversity manager in any workplace, low context or high context. Diversity management is the process of consciously being inclusive and becoming culturally competent by understanding the needs, the wants, the desires, the weaknesses, the beliefs and values of each and every employee or colleague, while also providing him or her the opportunity to contribute to the strategic goals of the department or project. So we're engaging everybody. Thereby, we would be creating synergistic results that are equal to or even greater than the sum of the individual parts. Workforce diversity management is about creating harmony in our head, in our heart, in our day-to-day habits about people who are very different from us. In other words, individuals who have a different background and perhaps a different culture. What you think, feel, and do should all be consistent both in homogeneous and heterogeneous workforces. Diversity consciousness can be seen as the proactive and progressive activation of the human mind or our senses to create awareness and develop understanding and skills in the areas of diversity. It requires cultural competency or lifelong soul-searching, self-reflection, and continuous learning. Diversity-conscious individuals understand that as young children, we did not always have much control over the programming or the conditioning that we received. Thereby, we may have received some negative or even stereotypical information about people who are different from us. However, as adults, we have 100% control over our behavior, and therefore, we are 100% responsible for changing or controlling any negative programming or conditioning that we may have received as children during our socialization about people who are different from us. Diversity-conscious individuals should understand that national cultural values are often embedded into one's subconscious mind during our childhood years. On the other hand, organizational values are usually taught and learned later in life through general education or workplace training. They can be changed more quickly or more easily through strategic orientation and socialization of employees into that new culture in the organization. Transculturation can be very beneficial for a workforce as it leads to individuals who are familiar with many cultures. For example, a person of mixed cultures may know that there are some differences between monochronic and polychronic time orientations in different cultures, which conditions people differently. Therefore, they can respond to customers who come from those different cultures effectively and obviously in a timely manner. In monochronic cultures, time is expected and used in a linear way. Monochronic time means paying attention to and doing only one thing at a time. On the other hand, polychronic time orientation means being involved with many different things at once. There's more emphasis on completing human transactions than on holding on to schedules. A mixed culture group is more likely to be synergistic when the task is organized so that diversity is an advantage, when the task is non-routine and open-ended, and when top management is supportive, when diversity training is provided, and when commitment of group members is rewarded. Know that cultures around the world tend to progress in a uniform and consistent way over time. However, some aspects of a culture may not change as fast as others, so we need to remain patient and understanding. For example, cultural lag is when parts of how things are done in the culture are not keeping up with the rest of the society. In today's cyberspace world of fast technology, people might change and adapt to using, for example, the same smartphone or same technologies that keep coming out every single month and the latest software applications, but their cultural values are likely to be unique to their national and local cultures. So the cultural values do not change as quickly as obviously technology changes. So just because we watch the same movies, use the same technologies, and wear similar clothing does not mean that our cultural values and norms are the same across nations and across the globe. Cultures and traditions condition people toward their own local values and norms, and thereby those norms obviously direct and influence their behaviors. One of the functions of culture is to regularize human behavior in a predictable and systematic way in a given locality or nation. As such, many individuals who are new to a totally different culture may experience extreme shock, sometimes known as culture shock. Culture shock is a sense of psychological disorientation that some individuals suffer from or experience when they move into a different environment or a totally different culture or a totally different country. Think about last time when you went to a culture that was very different than you. Did you experience any culture shock? Culture shock is the initial adjusting process for an individual when encountering a new culture. It is actually a natural response to a new cultural experience. The best way to eliminate culture shock is to become a multicultural or a culturally competent person. Cultural competency refers to the continuous learning process that enables managers, educators, students to function effectively in the context of cultural differences in any work environment, in any nation, in any culture, in any department, or in any team, whether it's heterogeneous or homogeneous. It has been said that the term multicultural person refers to a timeless, universal professional whose lifestyle is one of knowledge and wisdom, integrity and fairness, principle and fulfillment, balance and proportion. I do believe in that statement. Whoever said it, they were obviously profound thoughts for all of us. A culturally competent or a multicultural person is neither totally a part of nor totally apart from his or her culture. He or she can effectively function on the boundary by continuously learning and adapting based on the local norms and customs of any culture or nation. In summary, as a result of reflecting on the various diversity-related topics, you should know more about what we mean by the concept of diversity, inclusion, homogeneity, heterogeneity, cultural diversity, diversity management, diversity consciousness in transculturation, as well as monochronic and polychronic time orientations, which refers more or relates to high and low context cultures. Let me end by mentioning some of my favorite philosophical quotations regarding diversity, culture, in our society in general. Over the years, it has been said that we may have different religions, different languages, in different colored skin, but we all belong to one human race, by Kofi Annan. Traditions are guideposts driven deep in our subconscious minds. The most powerful ones are those we cannot even describe, are not even aware of, by Alan Goodman. We seldom realize, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own. For we think in terms of languages, in images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by our society, by Alan Watts. Strength lies in differences, not in similarities. The beauty of the world lies in the diversity of its people, by Stephen Covey. The crucial differences which distinguish human societies and human beings are not biological, they are cultural, by Ruth Benedict. Cultural differences should not separate us from each other, but rather cultural diversity brings a collective strength that can benefit all of humanity, by Robert Allen. A nation's culture resides in the hearts, in the soul of its people, by Mahatma Gandhi. Good luck in your research and reflections toward understanding the soul of your colleagues while creating an inclusive team in an inclusive organization or culture in any workplace that you work in. Good luck to you.